Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite people. Okay. Me. No.
Well, we didn't start out talking about you. We were talking
Yeah.
about recent typings, and then we realized something about you.
Yes. We've typed a lot of
terrible.
ones.
Another terrible thing about you.
Yeah, it just makes me worse. We were thinking that my one fix, I always thought it was one wing two, but in light of some recent typings and some comparisons, it's actually probably one wing nine. A lot of the say two people stuff being conflated with social and secondary six.
Yeah,
right.
So I guess this would be just an interesting time we could talk about me, but we could also talk about the difference between one wing nine and one wing two. So I wrote some brief notes trying to remember what we were talking about. But one thing that I was thinking about was sensual versus emotional. Of course, the whole gut center is sensual, but one of the reasons I think maybe some people might think that I am or that I thought that I even had self-pres is that like double gut thing of my frustration in the body center is actually very sort of grounded and physical, and there's a lot of sensate. Yeah, there's a lot of sensuality about like I really love. I don't know. The wrong lunch can like completely throw off my day, and like start having a 4 meltdown about how everything's gross and whatever. But it's sort of based in. It's not about self-pres like nourishment or having resources. It's just like there's stuff hitting my body and there's body frustration and I'm very irritated by it. And I think even one wing two can experience this. I especially see like 1/6 stemmers experiencing this, but I think for me it's pretty extreme.
So. Yeah, I think one thing I'd say too is there's an accent in your aesthetic that's textural, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And that leans 9. Yeah.
So with this recent typing that we did, what was the thing that we realized that we were initially thinking she was one wing two fixed? What was the thing that we realized that made us see one wing 9?
The kind of general me and my space and my irritation at one wing 9 versus one wing 2 heartfelt advice.
And one wing 9 like philosophizing from the sky tower or something, and not getting
an abstraction.
One thing is like one wing 2 is getting your hands dirty with the people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one wing 9 is like I'm up here making pronouncements or something.
Yeah, there's one thing I do, and I mean I remember watching my OPS video, and so I'm any dom, and so I don't know, like maybe it's that, but I think that like I can get abstract pretty quickly in a way that's almost like sensual and big.
That's 9 wing 1-ish, maybe.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other thing we noticed was just like there was a bit of a fantasy element that was present, and we were trying to figure out if that was. Yeah, and I was trying to figure out if that was coming from a life coach, because the thing about one wing 2 is that this is the life coach type 1, more so than one wing 9. One, like we were talking about Gore Vidal and how his style of oneness versus Jordan Peterson, pretty similar, very almost identical types, but he doesn't care about getting in there with you to give you the rules for life. He's just doing commentary from a removed place. And Jordan Peterson is always seems like he's on the verge of tears. Like there's a certain kind of 2-wing, I really care. You know, that I'm not going to do an impression, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, and the other thing too is when he when he talks about his experience, you know, with patients directly, you really get the sense that he was involved, you know, and deeply, you know, I don't know, concerned about their lives in a certain way. You get the flavor of that.
I also get a bigger, well, it makes sense, a bigger hit of superego at one wing 2. Like some people have mistyped Jordan Peterson as a 6, and you know the with Vidal, it feels it's almost like I'm gonna be on this ivory tower kind of thing, and I'm gonna throw out these little bombs of criticisms and whatever. Whether anything happens, who cares? Whereas One Wing 2 seems like I'm going to be on the front lines of some fucking issue, which Jordan Peterson was. Like, he made himself a firebrand for the pronouns, whatever thing that he became famous for.
It's like what you were saying. One Wing 9 is critique, and One Wing 2 is teach or advise. There's a different tone there. Yeah.
There's got to be an offering.
Right. With Peterson, he's got the 2-wing and the 4-fix. So that's a lot of like really colored emotionalism.
Yeah, and then that's one thing to know about Joseph is that for a 4, he doesn't come across as emotionally expressive as it's just there's a lot more emotional cutoff. Not to say that you're not of course you're a 4, you're still an emotional type,
it's true. I didn't, and I also didn't even, it took me a while to even see my own super ego, partially because whatever, I'm a core 4, and then it was just like, oh wow, I have 6 and 1. That's actually, and social, it's like a lot of super ego, but I don't think it's that much super ego. Like, our whole business is based on critiquing and complaining and giving advice, or not giving advice, giving assessments. Yes, there.
Nice professional way to put it.
Assessments. I don't have any super ego around like, let me sit beside you and like make sure you understand this. Like, I really could not care less. I just like verbalizing my principles.
Well, and another thing too, like I was saying earlier too, is One Wing 9 adds another layer of snob. It's that removal thing. Yeah. Which rings true.
Yeah, that's a very important distinction for me. Just thinking of the recent One Wing 2s that we typed a recent One Wing 2, and one of the most interesting things she said was that whenever she's interested in something, she immediately has to teach it.
Right.
And that strikes me as a very specific thing for One Wing 2. I mean, I'd like to look at we just did Morrissey in the previous class, and I have a feeling his 1-fix seems like it's One Wing 9, don't you think? I mean, he's super snobby. Super snobby.
On the subject of the 3 of us and what we've been doing over the last few years is the fact that you not that this necessarily accounts for all of this, but the fact that you didn't want to do follow-up calls, right?
Which you haven't.
I have not ever done one. I won't ever do one. There's just generally something more like cat-like and poised about like One Wing 9 just being like, I'm here, like, don't touch me. I'm in my perfect position and my tail's wrapped around me and that's it. Whereas One Wing 2 I find is actually a little bit less stiff in that way, and a little bit more like out there. One thing I've said just about like 9 versus 2, because 9 versus 2 are both in some way kind of like people centered in some kind of whatever, but 9 is a sort of like attachment absorbing, I'm holding space for you. 2 is I'm going to actually create an emotional landscape that is full of love and care and sort of actively do that. In a lot of ways, I think I saw myself as intrusive like that, but I don't actually think a lot of that may be coming from 6, but I don't think that I'm quite, my thing is more just like, don't bother me.
One thing that's making me think of is just like we decided 3-wing 2 was the slob messy 3. It's similar with 1, because 1's another controlled competency type, and 1 Wing 9 is more, like kind of like what you were saying, the cat-like removed aesthetic versus 1 Wing 2, which is messy in the sense of, people are mess. So
it's an emotional. And just the emotionality of 1 Wing 2 can actually be understated. Like, really, 1 Wing 2 is, like you said, Jordan Peterson crying. You won't see me even express emotion, like real emotion, for a long time. Like, we have to be close. And I'll express irritation and frustration and all that easy kind of anger-based emotion and sometimes joy or laughter or whatever. But, like, you're not going to see me
Yeah.
Like I have moments where I'm like, guys, I'm feeling something or whatever, but it's, and then I'm like, fuck that, it's done. Like
you want to like shut it off. You want to like,
yeah,
or
turn off that
yeah.
tap. Yeah.
I mean, my mom was Jordan Peterson's type twin, except SPSX, and my mom would get emotional in public settings or at a dinner party or something, and I just wanted to fucking die.
Yeah,
It was just like, like weeping and shit. Yeah. Just,
yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. Even as a fix, that's a pretty stark difference for a number of reasons. But like the 2-wing feels like they've already decided on what the solution is going to be, and it's almost like they're the preacher one. Like Jordan Peterson hasn't stopped telling everybody how to live their lives.
Yeah.
And the 1-wing 9, like Gore Vidal, what are some other examples that I can think of? Gandhi, Jeremy Irons is one we updated recently.
Yeah.
There's a very snobbish, sort of removed, withdrawn-ish.
Rafe Fiennes, is he another one? Remember him?
Yes, he's another one too.
That sounds right. Yeah, I think that.
It feels more like it has a refined feel to it. You know, similar to 9-wing 1 versus 9-wing 8. Like there's sort of a refinement to 1-wing 9, and also a removed style of oneness.
Martha Stewart's an SPSO 1-wing 9, I think, and that's it's about things, objects, as opposed to people.
Right. It's more aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just there's something. Oh, right. I was going to say about the sort of flexibility of 9. 1-wing 9 in a way might seem more rigid because they're like sort of aloof, but they actually are more flexible and shifting and kind of philosophical about, like, same with 8-wing 9 versus 8-wing 7. 8-wing 7 might seem more flexible, but they're actually just more dynamic.
Right.
They're
Dynamic
not actually flexible. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
On the point of sort of being removed, like give a Beatles example. George Harrison was a 1-wing 9, and he was called the quiet one, and he always had this distance, and like you couldn't get in there.
Yeah.
The thing you said earlier with flexible versus dynamic.
Yeah.
That's an interesting, maybe worth doing a video on, because that's because you can be inflexible but willing to move to other spots where, you know, it's sort of like with the double hex set, it's like I have these spots that I'm comfortable and I can move around them, but I'm not actually flexible.
You're not adapting.
I'm not
flexibility
adapting.
implies some attachment. Yeah. Just on this, like on a personal note too, I was saying on the call, like I've said on these pods that like my kind of like spiritual growth has been to channel DJ, which would now be my overlay. So there may be something interesting in there about people kind of like channeling something in their overlay if it forms a trifix.
Yeah, I mean, think about mine. Mine's 136 middle manager.
Yeah,
think about that. Yeah,
like, I have. Yes,
there's my work right there.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. But there's something maybe there, like it's some kind of like a demon almost, if you or like a shadow, like OPS language. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, it almost feels like it's what's a good word for it? It's not your type, but it's almost adjacent in the sense that you're reaching for it. So like, for example, Joseph, like you have 461 is like super critical, but you do have this social sexual plus interest in shows. Like I think you have like a natural like pizzazz thing of
entertainment, comedy. I love whatever. I get like dumb, stupid. Like again, if you know me, maybe I'm drinking. All of a sudden, I'm making weird sounds and just giggling. Like I'm total like not 461. Yeah,
it's a big part of what Prince's Court is.
Yeah. I'm kind of trying to
watch.
Yeah. I'm kind of trying to get there. Yeah, and then also I was thinking too. It's really really hard to do this. And it's really, my typing's always been difficult because 4s are so uncommon, and then like just my typing is just rare. So it's like when you don't have samples to compare to, like these nuances are difficult, right? So I mean, as much as I feel bad about like, oh, I got something wrong again, it's kind of just like, well, how are we supposed to? But I'm looking at my face, and it looks like too withdrawn for.
That's true.
Like my eyes, my energy. If you just look at a picture of me, It looks almost 9-ish. I used to, when I would be dating, when I was single, I get this comment all the time where I'd meet up with men and they'd say, "Oh, you're so much more like extroverted than I expected from your photos." That was the comment that,
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think looking at the fixed wings, especially the last one, can be tough. But I mean, one fix in general is not a type that we have a lot of experience with. We get a few ones per year, and we get a fair amount of one fix. But one fixed wings is something that we hadn't really done a huge deep dive in. So this is teaching us some stuff. Like, I didn't realize how much emotionality that one wing two has, and that's a good clue for me to pick up on from now on.
The wings are I constantly realize how massive of a difference it is. Like, even just stuff that we know already, but like when we did this whole 7 versus 9 thing, it's like, no, 9-wing 8 versus 9-wing 1 is not the same.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like the same type.
It doesn't even feel like the same. Yeah. Like, 9-wing 1s are polite and shy and refined, and that whole side of 9. Like, 9-wing 8s can be like absolute powerhouses. It's like a different. 9-wing 8s can be mean. They can be bullied. Like, I'm saying a lot of negative stuff. There's positive stuff too, but like, there's just, but that's the point is, none of those things you're going to pin on 9-wing 1. It's like almost impossible. So we're talking about different worlds. And so, it's the same with the hexad types too. It's like, again, we've seen like the difference between 6-wing 5 and 6-wing 7 is like
huge.
It's not even, it's massive. Like comedian versus, whatever.
Grump.
Scrooge, whatever.
I dated an SPSX 9-wing 8 for a few years, and it was interesting to contrast the two of us. And I was assertive in the context of the relationship, but she could be assertive like everywhere, like talking to a waiter or whatever.
Right. 9-wing 1s will sit there and like not like, you're at a restaurant and they'll be like, "What can I get you?" And they're just like, like not even, you know what I mean? But if you want to have a conversation about something delicate and important, 9-wing 1. You try to do that with a 9-wing 8. I mean, depending on whatever, you're gonna hit a wall. You're gonna hit that 8 wall. But the 9-wing 8 will boss people around and tell you off and be more honest about what they want. Right? The 9 thing of like, "Oh, I just went along with it." And that's kind of more on the 9-wing 1 side of things. Like, 9-wing 8s actually are way better at saying what they want.
They're often like business CEOs and U.S. presidents and stuff, because they can delegate. They don't have a problem. That's partly because when you have the one wing, you're neurotic about all the details of what you want done to be correct, whereas 9-wing 8 is just go do it. Just not getting lost.
And all the 9s that we had mistyped as 7, they were all 9-wing 8s. It's not a mistake that you make with 9-wing 1. So it's what people assume when they imagine what a 9 is, or they're generally imagining a 9-wing 1. Of course, they're like 9-wing 8s that are like super weed heads, and that looks 9-ish in some way. But then people don't know where to place. Where is all this assertiveness coming from? They don't seem so, asleep, although they are.
Yeah, unless your 9-wing 8 is super quiet and you can kind of get it from there, you might have more trouble typing 9-wing 8s, because they're just going to give off this combination of like assertiveness, but like likability and ease, and they seem to have no anxiety. So you're like, are they I don't know, like that 8 wall is like, I'm not showing you that I'm actually worried, or it's a difficult type to get, actually.
One thing coming to mind right now is 9-wing 8 is rejection-y in the sense that it's like an on-off switch. They're actually more dissociated than 9-wing 1, but then when they're on, they can do self-assertion.
That's If we apply that to 1, for getting back to 1 too, that rejection versus, I guess this would be rejection attachment. I mean, 1-wing 8 in some way is, for the same reason, more assertive, because it's just like, I have something to offer, I give, I do, I put out, you know what I mean, I'm going out. But if you want to talk to, again, the one about something like, yeah, a relationship conversation, whatever. The 1-wing-9 is going to be able to have that, to like sit there and hold space for this conversation and not just do the rejection thing of like pushing out.
Right.
Yeah, 1-wing-2s definitely feel more obviously one-ish in the sense that they already know they're already offering something. It's like at least 1-wing-9, there's like a withdrawnness and a less pushiness also, because they don't necessarily care if you take it, and they're not going to be there to hold your hand and make sure I'm going to coach you and make sure that you're getting this right. It doesn't have that feel, so it feels more like commentary, less maybe commentary and critique, and less about 10 12 rules for life. Like
I have a good friend who's a 1-wing-9, like 163 self-parasocial, but it's just kind of like, this is how I do things in my domain. If you're around me, it's going to run like that. You're either in it or you're not. I actually couldn't even care less if you're here. Like, as long as you're within these kinds of like, this is how I run my life so that I'm not irritated all the time. You kind of fit into it or you don't. Whatever. 1-wing-2 is like, all right, everybody, this is how I need everyone to act. Rules for your life, for everybody. And it feels a lot more intrusive in that way. But also not, like, I guess nicer. Like, it certainly feels nicer. Like 1-wing-9, you're just kind of like, does this person like me? You don't know. Like 1-wing-2, you're not confused about how they feel about you, even just fixed, right? 1-wing-9, and again, this is commentary. It's not just because I'm a 4, because I'm even social, but there's always this like, does he like me? I don't know. Does he hate me? And I'm just like, listen, I'm just reacting to my environment. Like, I couldn't care less about you.
One way to say it is two is communicative. It's like, let's have a relationship here. Talking. It's
No, that is a good distinction to make, because it feels like 1-wing-9s are at home and they're really rigid about their environment, and so they don't really care about what goes on beyond their environment. And 1-wing-2s, it's about people, and so people have to act right in order for me to feel the sense of alignment. And so there's more of a, this is the way, all the wrong ways that people are acting, and how to improve that and how to change that. Whereas 1-wing-9 doesn't really, not to say they care less about what people are up to. It's more about like what's my sort of like holding environment. It's more of a body centered thing.
And it's also more withdrawn in this, like we talked about this, like, why don't I come to the zones? Because I know that I'm not interested, and it will be uncomfortable or irritable or whatever. Like, I don't want to do it, so I won't come. I'm not going to show up and try to alter and change what's happening in that space. I'm just going to create my own. It is sort of cat-like. I'm just going to create my own little nest, my own environment here, dig my own hole, whatever. That's fine. Like, I don't give a shit, And so the thing about 1-wing-9 being at home, even in the case of social, you could be in that home space, but like with your own social environment. Like, this is the environment. These are the people that I feel comfortable with. If you want to interact with me, like, these are the rules for me. And I might have like, okay, this is how I want you guys to act or whatever. Most of the time, though, if you're not doing it, it's a sort of, oh, you know what? This is, sorry, one other thing I was going to say to this on the subject of this. My kind of like bad quality, or, well, I have several, but one of them is in relationships or with friendships, is critiquing people, but like from a emotionless, robotic, just, and like ripping people apart, like just kind of, it's kind of like the 8 thing of just ripping people apart, except I'm critiquing. I'm telling people like, you should have done this, and this was bad, and like, you're an idiot for thinking this, and it's like dead cold hard. The person in front of me is like crying. I've not noticed yet, because I'm just like, and there's a 6th piece of like, I have to tell you as well. Like, I have to, like, it's important I'm the police officer. I have to tell you. But 1-wing-2, I just feel is, it feels more intrusive, but it's also more heartfelt. As in, I really have advice to offer you, and it's, I mean, I might be wrong, but maybe it's actually more, actually useful. I don't know. Maybe that's not true.
They're trying to be. That's generally
Right.
generally
I'm
the
just
aim.
annoyed. I'm just personally irritated by your existence, and I have to tell you.
Yeah. Another riff just on two. I used to call two interpersonally phallic, right?
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
like I'm inserting myself into your life and we're going to have a relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think, at least for me, one thing that does hit me is that One Wing 2 comes across far more obviously superego, obviously because of the
Yeah.
1 and 2. So there's this extra dose of morality in, like, this is what's going to be helpful, and I'm really trying to do the right thing. Whereas One Wing 9 can almost come across a little bit amoral in a sense. Like,
Yes.
Gore Vidal he doesn't feel like a super rigid one, even though he is. He is about
Yeah.
some things, but it's not so obvious. Whereas Jordan Peterson has a ton of videos where you can see, oh, if you're still if you haven't started a family and you're older, that's disgraceful. You know, all kinds of shit like that.
Yeah.
Where he's a 174, but he's got like this super ego on steroids thing going on.
And that's like you said
Relationships.
earlier, it's like on the ground stuff.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
even for something as abstract as social self-pres, he's still getting right down there and being like,
Yeah.
these are really specific. Like women should not wear makeup to work or whatever. It's like,
Mhm.
you know,
Yep.
yeah,
And One Wing Nights feel more. It's more of an abstract, like Gore Vidal, very similar type, but he's talking about more abstract things. I mean, he talks shit about certain people, but it doesn't feel like things that are actionable in terms of, oh, this is what's going to change your life. He's talking
Yeah.
about like societal issues, so it's getting really in an abstract space.
It's so abstract that it almost feels, I mean, you kind of said it already, it almost feels not superego. It almost feels
Exactly.
like somebody that's not particularly invested in being a quote unquote good person because
Mhm.
it's so cold. You know?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, this is good because there are a couple types that I don't feel particularly strong at in the wings. Like 3
Mhm.
sometimes
Rare.
still feels tough.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so, yeah, maybe there are a couple videos we could do where we deep dive some certain wings like this. But yeah, this is good stuff.
Well, there's no, sorry, just going back to what you were saying earlier, like there's no, to put it simply, there's no heart center in One Wing 9. If you just isolate gut, yeah, it's super ego, but I don't even know if super ego is the best term for that triad, because super ego applies more to 6 than any of those two. Like if you actually think about
Right.
the original meaning of what that is, right?
Right.
But in terms of some kind of rightness and wrongness, right? But that doesn't, one, I don't find one to be actually inherently moral. I find One Wing 9s to be, again, just rigid and specific in the body center. One Wing 2s are absolutely moral.
Right.
So there's a because now we're talking about emotions and people and behavior and all of that kind of stuff. One Wing 9 is like, we're just talking about guts. We're just talking about body existence, boundaries. It doesn't have to do with I don't know, like feelings or thoughts. It's just like a reaction, like almost physical reactions to holding environments.
One thing you're saying there, like 6 feels more super ego, that it's partly that 6 is being a good person according to what the collective thinks is a good person, whereas 1 is absolutely making the universe themselves, right? Like they're creating the whole whatever field and the whole morality. Like there are plenty of ones that I don't know, promote promiscuity because that's actually the truth of what human beings are or something, or promote atheism. Like
Yeah.
some of the most staunch atheists are ones.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the 8 Wing 9 and 1 Wing 9 having a sort of parallel of detached critique and sarcasm and rudeness, but like just the tone of, I'm thinking of like, Seinfeld being secondary 1 Wing 9, or like B. Arthur being 8 Wing 9. It's just like, I don't know, look at a comedian that I can think of who's 8 Wing 9. It's just that kind of like you're garbage. You know, like that's just it.
Christopher Hitchens, do you know him? 8-wing 9.
Mhm.
He's a social self-pres 8-wing 9, just asshole critic guy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just this kind of like I'm so still and confident about my critique, and I'm separate from you. It's 1 wing 2, even people who have that fix have even a gentler tone in their voice. Like my voice is you know, wiry and grainy and I don't know.
Yeah, we talked about it like with 3-wing 2 versus 3-wing 4, how 3-wing 2s can be mistaken for 7 or a head type because they're giving you gaze, so they're giving you the smile, they're giving you some kind of personableness. And when you look at like, no one can mistake an 8-wing 9 for anything other than an 8. Like they're so rooted in themselves. You get a lot of that boss archetype with 8-wing 9, whereas 8-wing 7, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can someone might confuse an 8-wing 7 for. So 8-wing 9 and 1-wing 9, that 9-wing sort of just flattens things in terms of it puts a cold edge on it where
grounds it.
They don't care. Like they're
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That was one of Riso's things on the difference between 8-wing 9, 8-wing 7. Like 8-wing 9 is like Darth Vader energy. It's the cold 8. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the same with 1-wing 9. It's the person who's a scathing critic who couldn't care if you live or die. They're just reacting to what they think or whatever about you. Yeah.
That's a pretty big difference. Even
and
as
1-wing 2 is the god, the
the crusader. It feels it feels way more intrusive because I mean 2 is going to be you know, meddling and you've got to get out there and give an offering. You have to bring something to the table, even if it's just giving people emotional landscape along with what they should do. That's a pretty big difference right there.
Yeah, my mom, again, 1-wing 2, even though she was a crazy SPSX with 7 and 4 fixes, people would come to her as counselor. What do I do next? That kind of thing. And she would have stuff about their personal life and
Right. 1-wing 9 is the thing that you know this person has wisdom, so you might come to them, but you're not going to them for comfort. You're just 1-wing 2, well, you could go to them for comfort. They'll still tell you, like, they're still, you know, pretty rigid, but
I think people do go to 1-wing 2s. I mean that they put off that. Yeah, they put off that. I mean, they probably offer it. It's probably on their web.
They do. Yeah.
Again, it's that creating those. I think I remember I already said this, but yeah, creating. It's like if we were at a gathering and I was like, I want us all to go around the table and talk about something we're thankful for. That's too energy or wing energy stuff. I know. And sometimes those forced things can actually bring out spontaneous things, but sometimes they don't, and you can't force them. Like to me, it's like if somebody just starts doing it, it'll kind of happen. It'll be infectious and people will adapt to it, or it'll just happen. But like you can't create emotional landscapes of love and kindness.
Yeah.
Or at least that's my...
One way to say it, like using Josh's thing, what does he call the gut center? It's like the holding
environment. The holding environment.
So, yeah. So ones with a 2-wing are creating a holding environment that's communicative, personal, interactive, involved. And 1-wing 9 is the opposite.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this feels better to me too. Just, I don't know if I felt quite that hexaddy. Just, you know, like being with you, Emeka, like just seeing what like triple hexad really is. I mean, I wasn't triple hexad, but it sort of feels a little bit, not that this is a huge thing, but it feels a little bit better to me that I'm just a little bit more attachment-y than I thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems right. Yeah.
No, it's interesting, like to even think about with having a 7-wing, A-wing nines are much more like positionally sensitive in the sense that wherever I'm planted,
Oh yeah.
if you cross those boundaries, that's when
Mhm.
you're going to really see. So they're more sensitive about more things, but they're also allowing more things to cross the border. Whereas for
Yes,
me, it feels like
that's right.
I can move quickly, but if it feels like someone is impeding on my ability to move in an area that I've decided I'm going to stay in, like that's sort of
Mhm.
limiting my freedom feeling,
Mhm.
Hmm.
that's when, you know,
Mhm.
that like huge reactions can come about. But it's
Mhm.
interesting that I feel like I'm flexible, but I'm actually not. I just have certain areas that I can move very quickly around. But if someone tries to limit my ability to do my thing, then that's when it's a problem.
Yeah, like I guess 6 double hexad types. Um, you're not. They're not flexible. They're not adaptable. The only thing they can do is move to a different point that they're already willing to move to. So,
Yep.
like, if we're having a debate, and I mean, we've often had debates where you've changed your mind or said, okay, that makes sense, but I don't know, there's still this feeling that you're not like, okay, like we're compromising. You're just like, I've actually decided to move over there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and that's I can and this applies just to hexad versus attachment too, but it's just even more so I think when we're talking about like the more hexad you have, the more it's like I could be dynamic, I could go like
Right.
this all day, but those are all points that I'm locating at, not
Yeah.
adapting.
Because if it was a point where that I wasn't willing to move, we have to go our separate ways. Like, on
Yeah,
this issue, it's like
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
can't do it. Like, so it's
right.
not. I'm not going to adapt to something that is completely off
Yeah,
the table.
and I
It's
think one wing
also
nines are more adaptable than one wing twos in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
it's also contextual to the types, that we're thinking about or whatever. I mean, like, because 8-wing 7 has 7 with, I mean, any 7 influence is um like wanting to play with just the chaos of what could happen, and
Yes.
throwing the cards up in the
Right.
air. And so, and that speaks to your point about 8-wing 9 being more, whatever, sensitive to everything staying in a certain
Right.
spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's something I've noticed that I have a reaction to is there is a sense that I kind of want to see. I want to roll the dice and see what happens. There's a
yes.
creativity that comes in just,
Yeah.
some random shit could come out of this. And so when you're in that space and someone wants to stop that or wants to make it more rigid or wants to make it more predictable or, like it's fucking with the possibility of what might happen,
Right.
it's a weird thing to get really sensitive about, but I'm really sensitive about that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's like,
Hmm.
like leave me, like, let me do this thing.
Yeah.
Let's see what random shit can come about,
Yeah.
uh, versus trying to like put a clamp on it.
That's a good thing for 7 in general, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking of my friend Elisa who's got 7 and 8 too, and I think that she would really like resonate with this. It's just kind of
Hmm.
like because she has a lot about like I need my she doesn't say freedom, but just like me knowing her, it's just kind of like don't touch me. Like I'm doing
Right.
I'm walking here, I'm doing this thing, and I don't give a shit. And it's like she's like
Hmm.
I don't care if it's not going to work out. Like she's excited that
Right.
it's chaotic. She
Hmm.
just doesn't
Hmm.
Exactly.
care, and it
Yeah.
sometimes does and it sometimes doesn't, but she's like I have to. Anybody like if somebody says to her like oh like calm down, she'll just like fucking flip a table because it's like I want more chaos, I want to react the
Right.
way I want to react. It's
Right.
just like yeah, big messy. Hmm.
Yeah. I
Eight
mean,
wing nines
that's
are not that. They're not like that. They're not into
right.
chaos like that. No.
No.
We're partly speaking to my war against type 6. I mean, part of what 6, part of what 6, I mean, 6s, of course, are chaotic too, right? But at the
Hmm.
same
Yeah.
time, there's with 6 relative to 7, right? Contrasting them and me having 7 fix, it 6 is like stuttering, like, yeah, I guess we could throw the cards up in the air, but then what about this and this and
Right.
this,
Yeah.
right? And so it's
Yeah.
like, and I'm just like,
And make
just
it high
go,
off of
just do
that.
anything. You know
Just
what
do
I
Yeah.
mean?
anything.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Just jump.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just go. Yeah.
Yeah. 7. I keep thinking about that the TikToker Brent McClintock that I think we watched when we were talking about 7, where he was talking about how somebody wanted to punch him in the face, and he was like, please just punch me, just punch. Like, it's just kind of like, you could really get really hurt, but he's so excited about the possibility of this chaotic thing happening. And he's like literally not just like inviting it, he's diving into it.
And that's one reason I've always wondered, like, how the fuck did I stay interested in the Enneagram? Because I usually don't stay interested in anything more than, I don't know, a year maybe. And part of it is that people are so fucking unpredictable.
Yeah.
And every fucking typing video, even if it's the exact same fucking typing, like how to get there is different every time. So it's every single time is like, well, let's see what the fuck we're going to get. You know, like this sort of like roll the dice situation. So that's probably why I'll never get tired of it.
Different iterations, right? It's yes, it's the same thing, but it's all a different style or manifestation of the person's type or whatever.
We still get surprised. Like we'll get one.
Oh yeah.
Shit.
It feels like I'm watching a long-term episodic documentary that each episode is a surprise on what it's going to be, and we get a couple episodes every week. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Most episodes are boring, but some of them are really interesting.
And it's sort of like solving a puzzle, and it all connects to this living, breathing structure that we're like building, but also like learning at the same time. And it's even just this, it's just like, I can't believe after all this time, it's just like it's a small, I think it has big implications, but like whatever. So the wing on a third fix isn't a huge deal considering my typing. It's like, okay, we thought I got 6 super ego, I got social, I'm more extroverted, whatever. It just seemed like obvious, but it's just like, okay, we're really starting to make really fine distinctions. And for a type like me, where there are barely any other examples, it's like I'm still learning about myself even now after years, and I feel like it's going to be like that forever. Like there's just always something.
And even if David and I don't have any typing updates, but like certain recent typings or recent learnings will give you new insights on something you already thought you understood. And so like however many years it's been since I've been looking at the Enneagram, it's like every single year it's like new shit, new realizations, and just becomes it's a living, breathing organism. And the cool thing is about people showing up, showing you new angles on it, because you'll see a type that you don't see very often, and they'll be able to give you something that no other description could give you. Like a recent, type 1 typing video, just the way that she framed things was like, I've never heard a type 1 or something like that before, so.
Yeah, I have a lot of ones in my life, but they're not 4, 6, 1, like they're core ones. So I have a decent handle on one, maybe more than you, because I've still a lot of ones in my life, but this is still, and then you're learning more. Like I'm watching, the closer we get, and I'll watch you guys react to something, and I'm going like, what's this? What are we, and then being in a group like this, I'll do something and I'm like, they're going to have insight that I don't have on what I'm doing right now. And I'm actually excited about that, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing,
Right. Right.
Yeah.